Ethan, get out of there. It's not playing. It's going to kill you. The scream echoed through the thick, breathless silence of the Amazon rainforest, where only moments ago, a man had stepped into the mouth of a cave with nothing but trust in his heart and a camera strapped to his chest. Now he was on the ground, bleeding, barely conscious, while a 200-pound jaguar clawed at his body like prey. The sound was indescribable. Not just the growling or the wet thud of flesh being ripped, but the betrayal. The disbelief, a man dying in the arms of the very creature he had raised like a son. It all unfolded live on a YouTube stream meant to celebrate 10 years of companionship. Instead, it became a death broadcast. But to understand what happened in that cave, you have to go back to where it all started. Before we continue, if stories like this grab your heart and don't let go, real tales of wild bonds, hero animals, and haunting betrayals, hit that subscribe button to follow Animal Story. Every week, we dive into true stories that make you question everything you thought you knew about the animals we love. Ethan Hargrave wasn't a reckless thrill seeker. He wasn't trying to go viral or make a name off exotic pets. He was 47, soft-spoken, and wore the same sun-faded field jacket in every video. He lived alone in a hand-built wooden cabin deep in the Brazilian rainforest, not to escape people, but to immerse himself in the wild. His fans knew him as the Jungle Whisperer, but those close to him would tell you he never claimed to tame nature. He simply listened to it. Ethan's story with Kai the jaguar began when he was on a 2-week solo expedition, studying endangered orchid species near the Javari River. On day 6, he found a female jaguar's body already stiff, half consumed by vultures. Next to it, trembling, covered in dirt and flies, was a cub, barely breathing, eyes still shut. He could have left it. He should have, some experts said later. But Ethan didn't believe in walking away from life when it calls for help. He brought the cub back to his camp, fed it diluted goat milk with a rubber syringe, wrapped it in his thermal blanket at night. He named it Kai, from an old Amazonian dialect meaning shadow. Kai lived, thrived, and stayed. For nearly a decade, Ethan and Kai were inseparable. The jaguar grew from a fragile 8-pound cub to a lean, muscular predator nearly 7 feet from nose to tail. But around Ethan, he was gentle, rubbed against him like a house cat playfully bit at his boots, curled up beside his hammock. Ethan documented it all. His YouTube channel, Jaguar and Me, quickly became a sensation. Videos of Kai purring in Ethan's lap, chasing butterflies, even licking Ethan's face like a golden retriever, racked up millions of views. To many, they weren't just an odd pair. They were proof that love could cross any boundary, even the one between predator and prey. "He's not a pet," Ethan would always say. "He's my family. I didn't train him. I grew with him." Fans adored it. Wildlife officials hated it, but Ethan never monetized the channel, never sold merch. He wasn't in it for clicks. He was in it for Kai. But if the jungle teaches anything, it's this: nature never forgets what it is, and neither do its children. The camera that captured the first moment Kai opened his eyes would also capture the moment he closed Ethan's. Ethan Hargrave wasn't born in the jungle. He chose it. Raised in suburban Colorado, Ethan was the kind of kid who'd bring home injured squirrels, read National Geographic under the covers and tape maps of the Amazon to his bedroom wall. While other teenagers dreamed of cars and girls, Ethan dreamed of canoes and canopy trees. By 25, he'd already rejected the traditional American path. No corporate ladder, no mortgage, no 401k. Instead, he took his degree in environmental engineering and moved to South America, first to work on clean water projects, then deeper into uncharted forests where GPS signals failed and the sun set fast. Eventually, he stopped coming back. He built a life from wood, sweat, and silence. By the time he was in his 40s, Ethan had become a legend among certain circles. Botanists, conservationists, and even documentary filmmakers would occasionally reach out, hoping he'd guide them through the unrecorded wild. He usually said no, not because he didn't like people, but because they didn't understand the language of the forest. But Kai understood it all. That cub changed everything. Ethan often said, the first time he held Kai, it felt like touching the edge of something ancient. The bond they formed in those first weeks was unshakable. Ethan fed him, cleaned his wounds, even sang to him in the evenings. He slept beside him in the tent, one hand resting gently on Kai's warm belly, just to make sure he was still breathing. He recorded everything, not for fame, but for memory. Most people film to share their lives, he once told a reporter during a rare satellite phone interview. "I film so I don't forget how sacred mine is." As Kai grew, so did their bond. By the time the Jaguar hit adolescence, Ethan had already reinforced a custom-built enclosure near his cabin, not to trap Kai, but to give him space to roam without wandering too far. He didn't keep Kai chained or caged. The gates were left open most of the time, and Kai never ran. Locals in Brazil, when they heard about the American who lived with a wild jaguar, called him O Maluco dos Bichos, the madman of the beasts. But when some of them visited, they left stunned. They watched Kai approach Ethan, gently resting his massive head against the man's chest, eyes half closed in peace. You didn't need to speak English to understand what was happening. It was love. But love doesn't erase instinct. And Ethan knew that. He wasn't naive. He studied jaguar behavior extensively. He read every paper, watched every attack video, kept detailed notes on Kai's mood swings, weight changes, food preferences. He treated Kai not as a project, but as a force of nature with a name and a heartbeat. Still, he believed something most experts didn't, that living with a predator didn't have to end in tragedy. To prove that, he turned to YouTube not to brag, but to demystify. He posted weekly videos. Jungle breakfast with Kai, rainstorm hammock naps, building a pond for my big cat. Each clip ended with a message: respect the wild, but don't fear what you respect. The channel took off, not viral like a prank video or a celebrity scandal, but steady, loyal. People weren't watching for shock, they were watching for awe. Grandmothers in Ohio commented under his posts, "Never thought I'd care about jaguars, but this is beautiful." Veterans wrote, "This makes me feel calm, like someone out there found peace." He didn't ask for donations, didn't run ads, just kept filming, editing, uploading, all with satellite power and solar panels tied to the trees. It wasn't about money. It was about connection. But something shifted in Kai's eyes around year 8. It was subtle at first, less playful, more distant. He'd retreat into the shaded parts of the jungle for hours, sometimes refusing food until Ethan sat beside him. There were nights Kai wouldn't return to the cabin. Ethan noticed, of course. He made notes, adjusted feeding times, took fewer videos. But he never said he was afraid, because he wasn't. He trusted Kai, trusted the bond they had forged out of mud milk and midnight storms. But the jungle wasn't watching their friendship grow. The jungle was waiting. To outsiders, Kai was a jaguar. To Ethan Hargrave, he was family. There's no other word that fits. Not pet, not companion, not even animal. Family. Ethan never said it in some grand speech. He didn't need to. It was there in the way he laid out fresh meat every morning before even making his own coffee, in the way he checked Kai's paws for cuts after a rainstorm, in the way he sat beside him at dusk, listening to the birds fall quiet, never needing to speak. They had their routines. Kai would wander the perimeter of their jungle clearing in the early hours, then return and lay his enormous head on Ethan's boots like a sleepy Labrador. Sometimes Ethan would read aloud from books, Jack London mostly, while Kai snoozed under the hammock. And when lightning storms rolled in, Kai didn't bolt. He stayed close, nuzzled against Ethan's leg the way a frightened child finds his father's arms. And Ethan never pulled away. Their bond was more than just affection, it was survival. In 2018, when Ethan slipped on a mossy rock near the river and dislocated his shoulder, it was Kai who stood guard for 12 hours, circling him until Ethan could crawl back to the cabin. In one video later titled "My Jaguar Saved My Life," Ethan told the story without drama. He didn't growl, he didn't roar. He just stayed between me and the shadows, he said, holding back tears. I think he knew I was prey that day. Word spread. A filmmaker from National Geographic reached out. Animal behaviorists sent emails begging for data. But Ethan kept his world private. His subscribers on Jaguar and Me weren't just viewers, they were witnesses. Witnesses to something rare, something sacred. The comments section became its own jungle of support. This channel is the only place I feel peace. You and Kai remind me how deep trust can go. If only the world loved this way. The story even caught the attention of middle school science teachers who played Ethan's videos in classrooms. One wrote, "My students asked me if jaguars could really be gentle. I told them, not usually, but this one, maybe." But with fame came questions, and with time came change. In the last year, Kai's behavior started shifting just a little. A longer stare, a refusal to be touched on certain days. A low rumble in his chest when Ethan approached from behind. Nothing violent, just different. Ethan took notes. He called it seasonal variance, chalked it up to Kai maturing further. He adjusted, gave him more space, took down some of the older videos where Kai was more playful, maybe, to preserve the dignity of a predator growing into himself. But the bond that didn't break. In fact, Ethan posted one final video that summer. A short, quiet clip, no background music, just him and Kai sitting by a fire, the jungle crackling around them. He looked into the camera and said, "He's not the same cub I found in that storm, but I'm not the same man either. What matters is we're still here, still side by side." That video went viral in a quiet way. Shared between friends, used in animal ethics discussions, even referenced in a TED Talk about coexistence. And just like that, their story became more than just a jungle oddity. It became a symbol of what might be possible when we stop trying to dominate nature and start learning to walk alongside it. But beneath the beauty, something unspoken simmered. Some of Ethan's closest followers noticed it. In a few recent clips, Kai's tail flicked more aggressively. His gaze lingered on Ethan's throat instead of his hands. The moments where he used to lean in for affection, he pulled away. And yet Ethan, always gentle, always trusting, never showed fear. He believed truly and deeply that the bond they shared was stronger than instinct. That love could rewrite biology. That Kai wasn't just a jaguar. He was his jaguar, his shadow, his child. His mistake, he forgot that shadows don't always follow. Sometimes they lead. It started with a growl. Not loud, not aggressive, just unexpected. Ethan had reached down to remove a thorn stuck in Kai's paw, something he'd done 100 times before. But this time Kai jerked his leg back and let out a low guttural sound that made the hair rise on the back of Ethan's neck. He froze. Not from fear. Ethan didn't believe in fearing Kai, but from confusion. It was the kind of growl that didn't mean stop or ouch. It meant back off. Kai didn't lunge. He didn't snap. But his eyes changed in that moment, just for a second. The gold turned darker. The wild was closer to the surface. Ethan stepped back. Then almost immediately, Kai dropped his head and began licking the paw like nothing happened. Ethan wrote it off. Maybe the thorn hurt more than expected. Maybe Kai was just tired. Maybe it was nothing. But it wasn't just that one time. A week later, Kai refused to come near the cabin. Ethan left raw meat by the pond, where Kai liked to bathe, but the food sat untouched for 2 days. When Kai finally returned, he was more alert, more distant, his muscles tense, his tail flicking with sharp, annoyed whips. And then came the pacing, endless looping circles near the mouth of the cave. Ethan watched him from a distance, notebook in hand, tracking everything, distance, duration, posture. To him, it was behavioral data. To others, it might have looked like a predator waiting to make a decision. Still, Ethan didn't panic. "I've seen this before," he said in a voice memo. "It's seasonal, like pre-mating aggression. It'll pass." But the jungle had other plans. One afternoon, a small group of wildlife researchers arrived by boat, hoping to film Kai from a distance. Ethan allowed it on one condition: no one approaches him. No sudden movements, no loud noises. They agreed, set up their gear behind the protective fencing near the far edge of the clearing. But even from there, Kai was agitated. He stood at the edge of the trees, crouched low, watching the tripods with narrowed eyes. One of the researchers, a young guy named Kevin, accidentally let out a sharp laugh. Kai growled, loud, not playful, not curious. It was primal. Kevin froze, his eyes wide. The sound of that growl was ancient, a noise you don't hear in cities or zoos, a sound your body understands before your brain catches up. You don't belong here. Ethan stepped in, immediately putting himself between the cat and the camera crew, his voice calm but firm. "It's okay, buddy. They're leaving. You're safe." Kai held his gaze for a long, quiet moment. Then he turned, disappearing into the trees. After the crew left, one of the scientists pulled Ethan aside and said gently, "That jaguar isn't the same animal you raised. His brain's rewiring. He's past the point of bonding. He's territorial now." But Ethan shook his head. "He's not turning wild," he said. "He's remembering who he is. That doesn't mean he's dangerous." The scientist didn't argue. He just said, "Be careful, Mr. Hargrave. Love doesn't always override instinct." Even locals, those who once admired Ethan's unique relationship with Kai, began whispering warnings. A shopkeeper in the nearest village said he saw Kai near the riverbank dragging a wild pig back into the jungle with frightening ease. "He looked like a ghost," the man said, "like something from before man existed." Another neighbor, a hunter named Raphael, said bluntly, "He's sizing you up now. That's what they do before they strike. Don't ignore the signs." Still, Ethan stood firm. He wasn't stupid. He knew what jaguars were capable of. He'd seen them tear into caimans, stalk monkeys without a sound, vanish into shadow with terrifying grace. But he also knew Kai. Or at least, he believed he did. He's not a beast, Ethan wrote in his journal. He's my mirror. Whatever's changing in him, it's because the jungle is calling. I won't stand in its way. But sometimes love makes you blind. And the thing about blind spots, they're only dangerous when the thing you can't see is already moving. It was supposed to be a celebration. 10 years to the day since Ethan had found Kai cold starving, barely alive, curled beside his mother's lifeless body. To honor that milestone, Ethan planned a special live stream for his followers. No frills, no dramatic speeches, just the two of them together in the place it all began. He titled the event 10 Years in the Shadow. The comments poured in before the video even started. Can't believe it's been a decade. Still the most beautiful friendship I've ever seen. Protect Ethan and Kai at all costs. Ethan had set up the solar-powered camera system the night before. He didn't like filming too close to the cave anymore. Kai had grown more possessive of that space, but he made an exception. This wasn't just content, it was memory. That morning, the jungle was unusually quiet. The birdsong had dulled. Even the monkeys kept their distance. Ethan wore his old field jacket, the one with the frayed collar and faded name patch. His boots were muddy, his hands calloused, but his smile was soft as he approached the cave entrance with a bucket of fresh meat in one hand and a GoPro strapped across his chest. All right, Kai, he said into the camera. Let's remind the world why we matter. What happened next took less than 20 seconds. Kai didn't purr, didn't nuzzle, didn't make a sound. He lunged. From inside the shadows of the cave, with no warning, the jaguar exploded forward, muscles tight as a coiled spring, jaws open wide. The camera caught the moment Ethan dropped the bucket. Meat scattered. His eyes widened, but the name never finished. Kai's front paws struck Ethan's chest with such force he hit the ground instantly, breath gone. The impact knocked the wind out of him. Then the jaws came down on his shoulder first, then his neck. The camera caught the blur of fur, the flash of teeth, the brutal guttural sounds of tearing and gurgling and panic. Blood sprayed across the lens. Somewhere off-screen, a voice screamed, loud, high-pitched shaking. It was Adam, a fellow explorer and longtime friend of Ethan's, who had come to help document the anniversary. He had stayed outside the clearing, watching through the secondary camera feed on a tablet. He didn't know whether to run, call for help, or scream louder. Kai, stop! Oh my God, somebody help him! But there was no one to help. The video froze at the 1-minute 48-second mark. The signal cut out after Kai knocked over the main rig. The final image was of Ethan's boot twitching once, then going still. By the time local rangers and medical teams reached the site nearly 6 hours later, Ethan was gone. There wasn't much left to save. He had bled out just feet from the cave where he once slept beside the creature he believed would never hurt him. Kai didn't run. He sat nearby, chest rising and falling with slow rhythmic breaths, blood on his face, on his paws. When approached, he didn't growl, didn't resist. He looked tired, like something in him had been released, something ancient and final. The tranquilizer dart hit him square in the flank. He blinked, staggered once, and lay down in the grass without a fight. The jungle fell silent again, this time for good reason. The man who had lived among shadows had finally disappeared into them. News of Ethan's death spread fast. National outlets picked up the story. Social media exploded. Wildlife experts gave their opinions. Some blamed Ethan, others blamed Kai. Some just blamed nature for being what it is. But among Ethan's fans, the ones who had watched every video, every sunrise, every purring nap, there was only heartbreak. It wasn't supposed to end like this. They were different. We saw it. I still can't believe it. One commenter wrote what many were thinking. He raised that jaguar like a son, and it still wasn't enough. Ethan Hargrave had believed in something most people don't dare believe. That trust could overcome instinct. That love could tame the wild. That shadows, if held long enough, might eventually turn to light. But the jungle doesn't forget. And that day it reminded the world brutally that wild never means safe. They didn't kill Kai. Not right away. After the attack, Brazilian wildlife authorities sedated him, loaded his 200-pound frame onto a reinforced transport cage, and flew him to a government-run sanctuary outside Manaus. He was classified as a level 4 hazard, unfit for public display, too dangerous for rehabilitation, and far too famous to quietly disappear. Ethan's fans followed the story like it was breaking news. Some begged for Kai to be spared. Others demanded justice. Some simply couldn't speak at all. The man who once bottle-fed a dying cub was now buried in a small clearing outside his cabin under the same tree where he used to hang his hammock. A simple plaque was nailed to the trunk, Ethan Hargrave, 1975 to 2025. He trusted deeply. He loved without fear. The debate didn't die with him. Animal rights organizations called the incident a tragedy of human arrogance. Fans called it a love story with a fatal ending. Experts argued over whether Kai had shown warning signs too obvious to ignore. One viral tweet summed it up bluntly. We don't blame a thunderstorm for the lightning. So why do we blame a jaguar for being a jaguar? But another commenter pushed back just as hard. He made a choice. He trusted something that didn't ask to be trusted. He paid the price. Months passed, but the footage never faded. Clips from Ethan's final video were analyzed frame by frame. Wildlife channels dissected his posture. Survival experts critiqued his voice tone. Internet detectives built theories like shrines. But no one could answer the only question that mattered. Why did Kai do it? Some say it was inevitable. That even the most bonded predator still carries the instincts of 1,000 generations. That nature isn't cruel, it's indifferent. Others believe something changed inside Kai. That isolation, lack of mating, the constant gaze of cameras rewired him. But maybe it wasn't about biology. Maybe it was about boundaries. And maybe Ethan, brilliant, passionate, well-meaning, Ethan forgot that even love needs limits. As for Kai, he still sits in his enclosure. He doesn't pace, he doesn't roar, he just watches. Caretakers say he doesn't respond to commands, doesn't play, doesn't react to anything except the sound of Ethan's voice on old recordings. When they play archived clips, something stirs behind his eyes. Is it memory, regret, or just curiosity? No one knows. Because how do you measure heartbreak in a creature that was never supposed to love back? The Jaguar and Me channel now holds a single pinned video, a montage. No narration, just Ethan and Kai growing, playing, surviving. Footage from over 10 years stitched together with the sounds of rain jungle birds and Ethan's quiet laughter. At the end, a simple line appears on screen. If you walk with the wild, be prepared for where it may take you. The story became a cautionary tale. Schools used it in ethics classes. Documentaries asked, where do we draw the line between care and control? Some called for laws against exotic animal bonding. Others said the real tragedy wasn't what happened, but how few people ever understood what Ethan was trying to say. Not that jaguars can be pets, but that trust, real raw trust, requires risk. And sometimes that risk demands everything. So now we ask you, the audience, do you think love can ever truly tame the wild? Was Ethan brave or blind? If you had the chance to raise a creature like Kai knowing how it could end, would you still say yes? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if Ethan's story moved you even just a little, don't forget to subscribe to Animal Story. Because out here in the spaces where people and animals meet, we tell the stories that others are too afraid to touch. Until next time, respect the wild. And never forget it's watching.